Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the inaugural Leaders Panel discussion titled The Automation Maturity Business Case, Making the Leap from RPA to Cognitive Solutions Enterprise-Wide. And it's an absolute honor and privilege to welcome first the members of this esteemed panel, Sudhanshu Savlani, Head of Robotics and Intelligent Automation at ING Wholesale Banking, Netherlands, Arman Angeli, President, DFCG International, Chairman, SSC RPA and Intelligent Automation Committee, DFCG France, Sanjay Ojha, Senior Partner, Cognitive Process Transformation at IBM India and South Asia, Shantanu Dey, Vice President, Business Strategy and Global Operations Support at Midden Credit Management India. This session will be moderated by Sumit Srivastav, Partner Intelligent Automation at PwC India. I'm looking forward to this discussion and I hope you are too. So without further ado, I hand over the floor to Sumit.
Thank you, Wen. And once again, a very good morning to all the participants here as well as the people who've joined in. We heard about some of the interesting conversations in the earlier part of the event today, and maybe this sets a very good platform in terms of taking that forward and bringing the perspective from the fellow panelists which I have. Now, before I start off, let me also set a brief context in terms of what is intelligent automation, and I'm sure a lot of you would be following the automation story in the industry for last few years. There are multiple terminologies you would have heard, right from hyper automation to RPA++ to intelligent automation. So let me first spend a couple of minutes trying to set the context around these and simplify it for you. So if you look at the word called RPA, which was more on robotic process automation, this is a technology which basically helps mimic human actions for all rule-based activities. So today in my organization, if there are certain activities which people are performing, inputting information into various systems, gathering some information, putting some rules around it and transforming that and bringing some insights about it, all those activities can be automated using technologies such as RPA. Clearly that started off the whole automation era back in 2015 at a large scale. Not just in India, but across the world as well. Now, this coupled with technologies such as advanced OCR, which is optical character recognition, helped organization to convert information, which was then in a physical format, OCR it and scan it and extract that information from those documents to further enhance the automation quotient. And these technologies today have become advanced enough that it can extract information which is in a structured and an unstructured format, really amplified the automation quotient, because for a lot of activities, processes across organizations in different sectors, there were a lot of activities and information which was lying in physical documents. What happened back, post the OCR became an integral part of the automation program, came in the need to bring in cognitive automation. And when I say cognitive automation, there were a lot of unstructured information which was coming in the form of emails or in form of various documents which were really not very structured, like an invoice, and required organizations to have in a technology with AI machine learning components which could simplify and extract meaningful information out of that unstructured set of documents and give it to the RPA bots for further processing. Really, that brought a leapfrog, I would say, kind of interest leveraging these technologies. And then the last layer of intelligent automation, which is the conversational layer. In all our lives, we've seen how we're using like from Alexa to Google Home and working and staying in houses where we have automated home automation. We are driving cars which are connected today. Today, even the automation, the conversational layer is actually helping a lot of organizations interact with the underlying technology seamlessly, the way they would do at home. And clearly, these four technologies being layered together in an automation initiative by organizations is what most of the practitioners refer it as intelligent automation. Okay, so that's the background to set that. Now, if you look at what did intelligent automation did, it really amplified and brought limitless potential and opportunities for organizations. Now, while all this was happening, we had the pandemic come in 2019, and the pandemic really, made or brought a perspective right from organizations were made to rethink of what they were trying to do then. And this was the phase when, during the early phases, when nobody understood the pandemic, there were lockdowns being announced not just in India but across the world, and organizations were actually concerned to see how do they restart the operations, how do they bring their workforce safely back to their offices, and they were looking at technology intervention to support on some of those aspects. When that part of the, I would say, puzzle got solved, then organizations were actually looking to reconfigure their businesses, because there were, I would say, containment zones coming across different parts of the country, if I talk about India as an example, and that made it difficult to have a continuity into your business operations. And hence, people were looking at how do I leverage these intelligent technologies, what we referred earlier, to bring in a more resilient supply chain. How can I, amplify my sales through digital channels, because clearly I couldn't have all my salespeople on the ground. And the organization started transforming their technology, their processes, and the workforce around these areas. Now, while the organizations really could reap the benefits in reconfiguring their businesses with these technologies, now have made them think that how do they reinvent, because clearly for them to be competitive, to be profitable, and be better prepared for a better future, they need to look at how they are moving from a traditional organization to a more data-driven, intelligent enterprise. Now, with that as a background and a context setting, what I'm going to do is call upon each of my panel members with very specific questions, which will help you with a better, deeper understanding of how these transformations have unfolded, particularly in the last 1.5, 2 years, and share that insights with you all. So let me first, put the question in terms of how have each one of you, my fellow panelists, you have seen automation maturity curve in your organizations, or in case you are in part of the service industry with your end clients over the last few quarters. So let me start off with Sudhanshu first, and then I'll move on to the other panelists as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question, Samir. And also for setting the context that saves time. Basically, how COVID helped us in the sense of maturing our automation journey. I can certainly say COVID helped bolster the trust in technology in general, and more specifically in automation. Not saying that prior to that we were not embracing technology that often, but I'm sure there was still room for doubt and some insecurities around, especially in the areas where we were building automation, say shared service operations centers or customer service desk and all. So certainly, and now was the time when employers, when organizations had to do more with less, more work with less people, because suddenly they had to work remotely. Not everybody was available in the beginning phase. So it really helped get those special opportunities identified, special tasks identified, which never came across that could be automated, and those were just business as usual. Everybody was doing. And one such example for the banking industry was payment holiday requests, because this is something that normally we don't have that many requests, but suddenly during COVID, not everybody was able to pay their EMIs and premiums for the mortgages, and suddenly we had a peak in request, and normally we don't have this much capacity to handle. So automation was at the rescue, and we could quickly build, I'd say, RPA scripts to overcome that problem and basically show that to the organization and show to the people that automation can help you and can augment you to do your job, and then can leave you to do something that is more important and more productive. So really help build that trust and resilience in the organization.
Thanks, Sudhanshu. So maybe let me put the same question to Shantanu and get his perspective as well.
Sure, Sumit, again, thanks for the question, and good morning, everybody. So yeah, Sumit, I mean, yeah, this was when the pandemic started, we never expected it to last so long, first of all. Such a game-changing moment and a BCP event that nobody ever prepared for. But thankfully, we had made some investments already in intelligent automation and RPA. So definitely, our investments in the multiple critical back office areas of RPA made it easier for us to deal with the crisis, right? Business processes with investment in intelligent automation experienced a very smooth transition while, in the hybrid or remote work environment, remote at that time, really, hybrid probably coming on now. But while we were struggling to really understand how do we run the entire operations from homes, away from the office, right? The bots were working. So that was a moment of truth for many, many leaders and the laggards, some of the laggards. And they were like, hey, how do we get onto this bus now? This is a bus we also want to ride, because operations of the early adopters were not impacted. So I think that was a great moment of truth, and it definitely bolstered the business case for intelligent automation. There's some examples quickly, I can share. We are in the business of buying charged off consumer debt directly from the banks, and then working with the consumers, to get them back on the path to financial recovery, right? So during the process, the consumers always also dispute their debt. So Sudhanshu talked about the payment holiday. Something that we have very in common is the consumer disputing a debt, right, or asking for more information around it. Now we saw a lot of those go up at that time because the consumers were already impacted by in the US, were already impacted by the pandemic, right? So we saw the volume surge over there, but we had the bots, we had the codes running. We were able to add more capacity very, very quickly. And if we are not able to process the consumer dispute requests within time, this has got regulatory implications for us by the FCRA guidelines of US. And at the same time, it can also impact the consumer's access to credit. So we were very happy that something as critical as that, we felt like we are able to serve our consumers better because we've got this going for them, right? That's one example. The other thing you talked about is the automation of document ingestion and stuff like that, right? So mailroom, we also get a lot of correspondence from our consumers in the US, and our mailroom capacity was hit, especially in the Q4 of 2020 when it really surged in the US. We brought in a very skeletal staffing, but we faced some challenges over there. So very quickly there was a demand to automate the entire mailroom operations. Today, the scanning, sorting, indexing, document injection right into the systems is all being done by robots. Let me be honest. The scanning part is still done by the humans. So we have very skeletal staffing. Everything from there, and what used to take 5 days earlier is now done in 5 minutes. So the entire value chain has become much faster, which also, besides the cost dynamic, has got strategic play value. So I'll stop at that in the interest of time, but I can just go on, Sumit.
Thank you, Shantanu. Some very interesting, inputs what you gave, and I can echo that because, what I'd also seen is a lot of organizations. While financial services, yes, they were the early adopters of automation as one of the key levers as part of their business planning. But a lot of other sectors which were then toying with the idea in terms of how do I get started, I think so they were left with no option. But this was the only way of how they could, try and manage their business operations, especially when the pandemic, in the early phases of the pandemic. And really, a lot of organizations have seen those benefits coming in, and hence, there are no questions being put forward in terms of can I, what's the benefit of these technologies? It's largely the question what I'm hearing across from most of the organizations is how do I scale this and how do I make this as an enterprise wide initiative? So, totally echo what you just mentioned here. Maybe let me now bring in Sanjay, to share his perspective on the same question. Sanjay, over to you.
Sumit, thank you, and good morning, everyone. This is a very exciting topic, very close to my heart. I think my fellow panelists have spoken about, the impact of COVID, and at that point of time when it hit us, we didn't know, how to respond to that because that was, like a black swan event. And but the fact is that, it actually drove two kind of behaviors, which is driven by the need of the hour. One, just to become touchless, be it front office, middle office, or back office. Just the limited contact. There was a little bit of fear in businesses and in communities, and then coupled with the whole cost pressure, because now all of a sudden revenue dried up, businesses stopped. So both these led to, I would say, fast forwarding whatever was planned as an investment in the future. All my clients, and they are across industries, financial services, banks, insurance companies, steel manufacturers, media entertainment companies, all of them had plans, but their plans was 18 months, 24 months, a lot of organizational churn around, oh, whether we should do it or not, it's going to take away the job, and is it really efficient, and so on and so forth. All those conversations came to rest, and it was to brass tracks and say, we have to do it sooner than later, and let's make sure that it is adopted very broadly in the organization. And I mentioned, with one of the steel manufacturers, their export-import process, things around letter of credit process, right, which is so much, at the center of any export, functioning. So manual, but all of a sudden the teams came around and created, what are the inefficiencies and how you really bring in different components of automation. I will not say it's kind of intelligent automation yet, because as Sumit was saying, there is an element of AI, and there is an element of ML, and there is an element of cognitive extraction of insights. But I think they clearly are, on that path. For one of the top tier banks, it's about, contactless customer care, right? So, people reach out, but then there are a lot of cost pressures. So how do I really, put a bunch of bots, make it intelligent and deflect calls? For one of the insurance companies, again, very similar. Their sales process, right? I mean, straight through processing of their, policy selling and origination, and really, going hammer and tongs on reducing all touches. I think, long story short, I think it's in some ways it is like a, blessing in disguise. You kind of, pulling forward your investment. It created a lot of pressure, for our organization as well as for our clients. Just how to find so much talent and so much energy around it so that you can deploy these, RPA and intelligent automation transformation programs. But very clearly, 18 months have been, quite a bit of journey. And I would say clients have been successful in starting some POCs. There is a long road ahead. So that's my 2 cents, Sumit, and
Thanks.
Look forward to the others' ideas.
Thanks, Sanjay. And probably, I'm not sure if time permits, but clearly, if we categorize today organizations in terms of what, size and scale of some of their automation potential they've been able to achieve, there are few who would have been maximizing it, but I would say maximum people are still in the early stages of evolution, where it could be more prominent in certain business units, but at an enterprise-wide, yes, we're seeing good traction, but conversion is the phase when I expect next few quarters, we'll see most of them moving into that. So very interesting journey, I believe, especially for practitioners like you and me, to see how this evolution happens, and would be an interesting phase of the pandemic. Now, let me bring in Armand here to the same question, especially, Armand, with your role where you are advising a lot of these GCCs in terms of, how they would bring in efficiencies and onshore to offshore to, maximizing efficiencies in the business operations. Probably very keen to hear your perspective in terms of how you've seen maturity of organizations using intelligent automation technologies. Over to you.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with all of you and give some views from the CFO community in France and Southern Europe. I have to say, COVID has been a big wake-up call for CFOs, for the finance functions on this side of the world, because it has revealed that finance function is still very people-intensive, that our processes are fragmented, are not automated, and that we have a long road ahead, as someone put it just before me. And also, I have to say that in France and Southern Europe, we don't have all these nice shared service centers, or we are not very much yet into BPO, BPS, and that's something we are looking at now, pushed by COVID. pushed by the fact that we want to be able to remove all the paper that we have. We want to be able to push on a button while working from home, because most of us have been working from home during the COVID period, but hardly anybody wants to go back to the office. It was too nice to stay home. So yeah, this has been a big wake-up call. This has been also a big. This has created lots of interest for RPA, automation, AI, but I have to say there's still a big confusion. People still want to call OCR. They think it's AI, you know. So there's lots of explaining to do. And for example, I'm chairing this committee of finance people discussing on automation, RPA, AI, and we grew from only a few people to now several hundreds of people who want to share between practitioners, between peers, to see how to advance the journey. And also, going back to maybe to your initial question, this has also created some need to rethink the organizations, because now with new tools, we can think of with the cloud, we can think of having virtual shared services centers, sharing more between the corporates and remote centers in India. So now we are starting to talk more about cyber shoring and so on, and so where we can leverage the tools that have been put in place in remote locations. So it's actually it's very interesting, but we're not there yet, and people think that the ROI is right there. Sometimes they forget about organization, they forget about people, but we are moving ahead, and thanks to I would say to COVID, unfortunately.
Sure. Wonderful. Thanks. But and you touched upon a very interesting topic in terms of the people aspect of it. And we are all moving in the world where today organizations would have both human workforce and digital workforce working together. And one of the biggest challenges is, how do you make this marriage work? Like any other marriage, there would be problems, there would be issues, and clearly, an organization need to be prepared to manage those challenges. Now, which brings us, interestingly, to our next question, which I wanted to put across to all my fellow panelists in terms of, we all heard about the potential for automation within organizations. I think so. It's a no-brainer. From what I could conclude from all of the inputs provided by you all, yes, organizations are left with no options but to leverage these technologies. However, still we have seen the pace of adoption could vary from sector to sector, from organization to organization. But now coming to the next interesting part of the question is, as I mentioned, marrying human workforce and digital workforce. What I wanted to put a question forward to each one of you was, what are the potential challenges and pitfalls you would have seen as organizations have tried to scale their automation program? So let me run again in the same order. Sudhanshu, I'll invite you first to share your perspective on the question.
Yeah. So perhaps I can answer this question in two ways, because for us, scaling was in terms of scaling our infrastructure and our robotic scripts to the entire organization, but also as a maturity growth to cognitive, so to do more intelligent stuff than just RPA. So one of the biggest challenges that we faced initially in that transition was identifying the right use case, coming across the right use case to deliver impact with cognitive. And if we do a root cause of that, one of the biggest reason was our own strong image that we created, being a robotics team, being the RPA team. And so there was some kind of cannibalizing effect. So we did a great job in marketing and the buzz around with the vendors and all, that yes, robots are there at the rescue. And if you have the standardized workflow, if you have the repetitive task, you build robots. So we had that nice image created, very strong image. So we were having loads of work in our backlog, in our pipeline to build RPA. So initially, of course, a lot of high impact work that came our way was already delivered. So we enjoyed early successes. But later on, the work that was left, or later on, the work that was coming for RPA was not that very high impact in terms of time saving and the number of hours that could give back to business. So indeed, it was need to refocus and do rebranding of our activities to intelligent automation, re-educating our employees and organization that intelligent technologies can do much more. And then it is not just about time saving; it is also about delivering other benefits like getting rid of really work from mundane work and giving a productive work and creative work to employees that would basically help them become more engaged and then give us other benefits than just time saving. So yeah, that was basically one of the major challenges that we faced and how we tackled it.
Perfect. And maybe Sudhanshu, just to add on to what you mentioned, a lot of organizations, while I've seen they're very keen to start off with the automation program or make leapfrog progress around it. When you ask them what are your business drivers, they will start scratching their heads, because business drivers for different departments could be a combination of multiple levers, right? From better compliance, better controls to FT savings to
Yeah.
throughput, time to market, error reduction. I've seen that organizations need to bring a more matured view in terms of
Yeah.
looking at all of these business drivers effectively while arriving at what use cases I should bring into my automation program. Clearly, I would say organizations have made some progress in that, but clearly a room for improvement. So certainly, echo your sentiments on the same. So let me now call on Shantanu to bring your perspective. Shantanu, over to you, please.
Hey, thank you, Sumit. So first of all, I would just like to kind of second what Sudhanshu said. He very well covered the cultural part of it, the and the other challenges related to popularizing it, creating more adoption. So yes, we at Midland Credit Management had similar challenges. Most companies get the POC right pretty quickly and get very excited. But when you ask them, what next? What's your roadmap? What's your strategy? That's where sometimes there's struggle. So one thing, besides everything that Sudhanshu covered, I second that. Plus, I'll just add one thing. It has to be part of your uh, core business strategy. I mean, it has to be part of your budgeting and planning exercise. You got to be sure about, okay, how much am I going to invest this year in robotics, and second and third year? Create a 3-year ROI. Hold yourself accountable to it, and your leaders accountable to it, right? I think that's very, very important. The other part which you talked about, so Sumit, very briefly though, is understand the strategic impact as well, not just the cost driver on the cost play. We have been able to, I didn't talk about this previously, but we've been able to kind of automate a large part of our legal processing. We also have legal processing in our debt collections, which most debt collection companies have. The entire value chain of, let's say, suit creation, e-filing of the suits, post judgment, post garnishment, a lot of tasks which we never thought can be done with our. We challenge the entire value chain, and we've seen radical reduction in the timelines, in the number of days, weeks, and that has converted very quickly to economic value, time to market benefit, and other stuff. So we were able to also use that to create a lot of interest besides the cost play, right? The other two things very quickly, from a challenge standpoint, is finding it the right home. This sometimes we can underrate. The business can get very quickly excited, say, oh, we know the business, we know the process at level 5, we should do it. Absolutely, yes, you do. It is not a workflow or automation. It is different. It's supposed, your code is supposed to be smarter than the 10 best SMEs you have across global operations, right? Otherwise your throughput will be like 40-50. You got to be at 90 with a 99.9% accuracy. That's what we operate at. So yes, the business has to kind of be there, but IT, without IT we can't do it. And that's where, how do you bring the two leaderships together? How do you have IT and the business co-own it, right? And in the end, business has to adopt it and help realize the business value. So I think that is an area where it can become a bit of a challenge pretty quickly. And the last one I would quickly say from a challenge is that where we were able to find innovative ways to solve it ultimately is the financial prudence, the financial governance. Some companies, as they start to achieve scale, they would see that, hey, we are putting a lot of bots, a lot of processes are getting automated, but are you really unlocking that value, at least the cost value that you promised, right? Because nobody wants to let people go or find new work for them, and that's where you have to have very strong prudence. So we outsourced, or we enabled a finance team, FP and other teams, to hold us and the entire leadership accountable, right? And they became the voice which kind of owns and governs that. So some of those things were some of the key challenges that come to my mind, and yeah, happy to say that we found ways to deal with all of
Thanks,
those.
Shantanu. You touched upon some very interesting points, and the second point was largely around the governance part of it. I have seen a lot of organizations in the early phases of their automation program. They were very enthusiastic, said, let's bring in 5-10 bots into production. And governance was more of an afterthought. And it was later then they realized who's owning it. Is it IT or me? Suddenly there was an application refresh, which made a lot of bots redundant, and they had to reconfigure it. And that's when organizations realized that when you're looking off at this as a strategic program, the governance part of it is critical. Having the right kind of understanding in terms of what does the IT do, what does the business do, becomes very critical, because this is not in the pure sense an IT program. It is a business-led IT initiative for a lot of organizations, and hence falls a bit into that gray area where organizations have found it a bit challenging to get their thoughts around. But probably let me now invite Sanjay to share his perspective on the same question. Sanjay, over to you.
I think Sumit, I'll build on what we heard from Sudhanshu and Shantanu. Just the vision. You obviously the challenge is that if you really spend a lot of time creating vision and strategy and not show initial success, it's not going to create the initial buy-in. But that's very important. Setting the vision, and lack of vision, being tactical in the beginning, eventually you hit the roadblock. I call it organizational challenge. Then the support from all enabling capabilities like IT and data and so on and so forth. Second one is I call process pitfalls, which is really choose the processes which are more amenable for automation, where you see the success is going to be higher, because if you take some of the most difficult processes not amenable for automation, again it just falls into the loop of not showing the value fast enough, because the appetite of the business, they want result in 30 days, 60 days, and they can't wait forever. And then the third one, which is actually I faced with one of my clients, where the promises you make, you have to keep those promises. If you say it's going to take 90% of manual effort out and we're going to automate it, it should be better with that. Otherwise, people start double guessing the capability, technology. People don't figure out what is not working. You mentioned about optical character recognition. It's an evolving technology. It is getting better day by day. Still, there are promises in the market which are 40, 50, 60% clarity of information that comes out of it, how usable it is. As far as you get your organizations aligned on that, probably chances of success are higher. And I have seen our clients getting stuck, and it takes a lot to kind of unclog and unwind from that place on. And last one is post implementation. Once you implement it, then is it scalable? You need to plan for that. Scalability is a very very, very important, and what I call the maintenance cost. It should not be like you have to put all your resources and energy just to maintain it. I think if you really see what in my travels, those are the challenges that I've seen, and I think there are ways to mitigate that. And some clients are trying it and becoming successful. So that's my thought. Sumit.
Sure, and maybe you touched upon an interesting thing. Your approach to run a program enterprise-wide in an institutionalized manner, a lot of different levers will come into play as compared to a program which is 5-10 automations coming in. and the whole mindset, as well as aspects in terms of reusable components. How do you make your support cost more effective? The governance has to be further enhanced. Clearly becomes much more, and a lot of I would say we've seen organizations have to relook at many of their policies, procedures, because they were never detailed to include a digital workforce within your environment. A very interesting incident in the early, I would say 2016-17, I was meeting one of my clients. They had some 100 automations, bots running in, and he said, I'm struggling because, when we created the digital workforce ID, the access rights were similar as that of a human workforce. And suddenly after 6 months, all the IDs were deactivated because as per the IT policy, people, they had to undergo a compliance training. And he said none of the digital bots went through a compliance training, hence the IDs have been blocked. Really required at a global level a policy change to have a different kind of settings being required for a digital workforce access as compared to a human being access. And hence there were challenges which just stalled the momentum of the whole program. So, certainly interesting
That's a
stories.
great example, Sumit. I think what you just mentioned about, right? I mean, you expect digital, workers to go through the same motions as humans,
True,
right?
true. So, but the interesting part, what I've also seen is that, today, if anybody is starting a program, you can learn from a lot of these experiences, because when you're setting up today, the challenges what people have gone through back in 15, 16, 17 as compared to 2021, there's a lot of learning, thankfully, what I'm seeing in the industry as well. Let me now bring the same question to you, Arvind, and I'm very keen to hear your perspective on the same question. Arvind, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. To your last point, and the success of our community, which wants to share between peers on the success, with good and bad experience. So lots was already said. I can only confirm that some of the challenges would be how to avoid friction, to say more, between IT and business or finance. Another one would be how to accept that you're not going to have a straight quantitative ROI, but you have to look at qualitative ROI with compliance, with people being more happy and so on. Also, people are still confused because we are telling them about RPA, but first they need to look into how to repair, reassess processes, maybe use common sense before using all these nice tools, without going overboard and putting what I see now, these big process mining tools, and you end up with lots of data which you don't know what to do with. One thing I would like to stress also is the skill. We are facing skill issues with our workforce, and of course we can't get rid of the people that they are there, so we need to upgrade them, to upskill them, but it's a challenge, but I guess we will get there. And overall governance of this program is key, which includes all of the above we discussed, which we can bring together in a center of expertise with all the roles that were discussed by me and before me. So that's
Thanks, Arvind. I think so. You summarized it in a way, capturing all the key points which people have shared. Now, probably let me put across the last question, maybe a minute each for each one of you. Now, we talked about how the automation transformation has happened over the last few years, in particular, what have been the kind of challenges and pitfall. Now, if you have been asked to give one advice to somebody at a CXO level who's setting up or starting off an automation program, what would that advice be? I'll just request 1 minute for each one of you. Again, starting with you, Sudhanshu.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So I think if it's for the starters, I would say just do it. No POCs because it's a proven technology. It's proven to deliver value. No POCs. But as it was emphasized in the previous conversations, governance is a must. If not day one, day two, you should have the governance in place and look after the bots that you've built in production. So do not just deliver, but also have the operations management in place. So that would be for the starters. And for the ones who are scaling, I would say change the metrics. Do not get stuck with time saving and FTE saving. Change the metrics, change the conversation from time saving to something beyond that, employee experience, employee engagement, and then take the organization along, upskill people, because you cannot, soon we will have shortage of people for the future of work, because the future of work is not going to be the same as it is today, and we will not have enough people to do what the future demands. So upskill your people and take them along in the journey. That will be my 2 cents.
Thanks. Shantanu, we'll go next.
Yeah, very quickly. I will actually share a slightly, different kind of an opinion on this one. Maybe an unpopular one, which is that when you read about RP or talk to a lot of friends, I've got a lot of colleagues from Big Fours over here, right? You will hear that okay, this is like something which you can do a POC in just days and put it into production in weeks, right? And that's how you will start selling it internally. And then there'll be a day when you do a POC, which will be a simple to moderate case, and you'll see success, a lot of excitement. And then comes the thing where Sumit talked about and Armand and everybody talked about the cognitive services, that OCR thing. And then you'll see, hey, why I'm not getting the outcome? Why I'm not seeing the results that were promised? So I want to tell you and warn you that this is not a silver bullet. This is not a plug and play. This is what do you call macros and steroids, of course, right? It's a very smart technology, extremely, but you got to use it well and be patient with it. It requires a lot of commitment, a lot of patience, and can take sometimes months to train your code right. So just want to set the expectation right. That was my learning, by the way. Big learning.
Thanks, Shantanu. Sanjay, your comments, please.
Yeah, I think I'll just probably a lot of points around governance, skill, setting the right expectation has been covered. I think probably the aspect which I will address is that intelligent automation, consider it as one of the 3 pillars which of AI-led transformation for your organization. The other 2 being the brain of it, which is machine learning and deep learning, which is learning from data, and then experience through conversational intelligence. Make it part of that larger ecosystem and part of your larger AI-driven transformation agenda. And then everything that we heard, around organizational technology, expectations. And it's not I like that, the term which was used by one of our co-panelists, which is not silver bullet. Setting the expectation, I think it will just go a long way. I think its adoption takes time. And firms that have invested in time and effort on adoption, they are in the long haul for that.
Sure, thanks, Sanjay. Armand, over to you.
I guess I would just say, I would just recommend to talk to your peers so that you can come down to earth with all these programs and really set up a center of expertise which should bring together all the issues and solutions, hopefully, that we have discussed.
Sure, thanks. Maybe there are also a couple of questions. We're running short of time. Probably I'm taking the liberty to put one question across to my panel members and see who wants to take that up. So the question was, how do you see RPA helping companies to direct their workforce to more critical tasks that require human intelligence and decision making? So I'll open it up. Anybody who wants to take this up?
I can attempt it and quickly.
Sure.
So yeah, definitely, as you start to do RPA, you realize that pretty soon you start to exhaust the simpler use cases, right? And then you say, okay, what do I do next? And that's where this question will come naturally to you, that how do I penetrate deeper? And that's where, there are some use cases that we saw back in the days or years ago that, okay, how do we do this? Now technology is evolving and we can get into terrains we did not think earlier would be possible. Blue Prism and some other popular RPA tools have integrated technologies. And I think Subhash talked about that just before us. So one of the things that we are testing now is human in loop. And sometimes people talk about human in loop in front offices. We are testing that in back offices also, where we need a human to take a judgment or decision on something, but there are 10 other administrative tasks in the same process right after that. We're telling the human, do your part, give it to the bot, finish it off. And that's where they're also liking that they're taking more strategic value or part they're playing in that process, but the others are kind of being done by the bot. So I think the two can coexist, and that's where there's a very good feedback from the people also, and they're really liking this.
Sure, sure. And maybe just to add my perspective, what I've seen is, while there is a common saying to say, these technologies are there to take the bot out of human, make you move towards more value-adding activities and enhancing your skills. And this brings a larger initiative for organizations to run in parallel in terms of digital upskilling and up performance for their organization and human workforce at large. Because the way they were, these technologies are clearly transforming our workplace, and workforce on all three aspects. And hence, it needs every CXO to go back to the drawing board and see what activities I would like my digital workforce to perform gradually and move it to the digital workforce, and where do I like to invest my human workforce more effectively for more value adding activities and try and help them with this upskilling kind of journey. I think so, is the interesting challenge which a lot of people at the senior positions are now trying to put an answer to. But clearly, having said that, I think so automation is the life skills of the future.